The world is watching Venezuela, a nation at the crossroads of history and power, but the real story goes far beyond headlines of political crisis and economic collapse. What you see in the news is just the surface. Beneath it, deeper forces are at work, shaping not only Venezuela's fate, but the future of global power itself. Beneath the turmoil, a global power shift is underway, one that could reshape how money and oil are controlled worldwide. Venezuela, with its immense natural wealth, has become a battleground for influence where the world's superpowers quietly compete for control. What happens in Venezuela ripples out, affecting gas prices at your local station, the strength of the US dollar, and even America's global standing. Every decision made in Caracas can send shockwaves through international markets and households around the world. We're told this is about democracy versus authoritarianism, or a failed state on the brink. But the reality is far more complex, involving a web of interests, ideologies, and ambitions. At its core, it's about oil, Venezuela's vast reserves, the largest on Earth, and the fight to control them. Whoever controls this oil holds a powerful lever over the global economy. This isn't a war of armies, but of sanctions, currency swaps, and shifting alliances. The weapons are economic, the battles fought in boardrooms and back channels. For years, the US tried to isolate Venezuela with economic pressure, aiming to force regime change by cutting off oil money. Sanctions were meant to bring the government to its knees, but the outcome was far from simple. But Venezuela adapted, finding new partners and new ways to sell its oil. The country turned to nations willing to defy US pressure, forging new alliances and trade routes that bypass traditional systems. In doing so, it accelerated a trend that threatens the US dollar's dominance. As oil sales shifted to other currencies, the foundations of the global financial system began to tremble. China, Russia, and other nations saw opportunity in Venezuela's crisis, testing the limits of the old financial order. They invested, negotiated, and expanded their influence, challenging the status quo. The events in Caracas are a symptom of a much larger change. The rules of global power are being rewritten not just in Venezuela, but in capitals around the world. The world order built after World War II is being tested as never before. Old alliances are shifting and new coalitions are emerging, challenging decades of established norms. The outcome will shape the economic and political landscape for decades to come, influencing everything from trade to security, and the daily lives of people everywhere. Understanding Venezuela's story is key to understanding the future of global power. It's a lesson in how nations adapt, resist, and reshape the world around them. This is not just about one country, it's about the future of the world's financial system, and the balance of power that underpins it. The stakes are enormous, and the consequences will be felt everywhere, from boardrooms in New York to markets in Shanghai, and homes across the globe. The quiet battle over Venezuela's oil is redrawing the map of influence, creating new winners and losers in the global game. The old rules are being challenged, and new ones are emerging, forged in the fires of crisis and opportunity. The test is underway, and the world is watching. The story starts here, but its impact will echo far beyond Venezuela's borders, shaping the world for generations to come. We often focus on leaders, the faces and voices who dominate headlines and shape the public narrative. But Venezuela's crisis is about systems, not just personalities or political parties. It's about the vast interconnected machinery that underpins nations and economies. The real battle is over the machinery of global finance and energy, systems so complex and entrenched that they often operate beyond the reach of any single leader. For decades, the petrodollar system made the US dollar the world's oil currency, giving America immense leverage over global trade and the flow of resources. Sanctions against Venezuela weren't just about democracy or human rights, they were about defending this system, protecting the dollar's central role in the world economy. When Venezuela, with its massive oil reserves, challenged the petrodollar by seeking new partners and alternative payment systems, it threatened the very foundation of US power and influence. The US response was swift and forceful, enforcing the old rules and making Venezuela an example to others who might consider breaking away. But the world has changed. China, now the top oil importer, has little interest in relying on its rival's currency to fuel its own growth and ambitions. China and Russia saw Venezuela's crisis as a unique opportunity, a chance to test the system, to build alternatives, and to challenge the old order. The conflict quickly became a proxy war over the future of global finance, with each side maneuvering for advantage in a high-stakes game. The petrodollar's dominance is no longer guaranteed. Its grip is loosening as new players and new currencies enter the field. New economic powers are building their own networks, forging alliances, and seeking to escape the dollar's grip by creating alternative systems of trade and finance. The struggle in Venezuela is a microcosm of a much bigger shift, a reflection of the global contest to reshape the rules of money, energy, and influence. The old machinery of power is being challenged from all sides, dismantled piece by piece, as new forces rise to take its place. The outcome of this struggle will determine who controls the flow of money and energy in the 21st century, and who sets the rules for generations to come. This is a battle of systems, not just leaders. A contest between old structures and new visions for the future. The stakes are global, and the consequences are profound, touching every nation, every market, and every citizen. The world is watching to see which system will prevail. The game has changed, and its outcome will shape the world we all share. U.S. sanctions were designed as a powerful weapon, aiming to cripple Venezuela's oil industry and force a dramatic political shift. The strategy was clear: hit the country where it hurt most, its oil lifeline. The plan was to cut off Venezuela's access to U.S. dollars, starve the government of much-needed cash, and trigger an economic collapse that would bring about regime change. By freezing assets and blocking transactions, the U.S. hoped to squeeze the country into submission. For a while, it seemed to work. Oil production plummeted, businesses shuttered, and the economy spiraled downward. Ordinary Venezuelans faced shortages of food, medicine, and basic goods, waiting in long lines as the crisis deepened. But then, the sanctions had an unexpected effect that no one in Washington had fully anticipated. Isolated from the global dollar system, Venezuela was forced to innovate and adapt. Engineers, business leaders, and government officials began searching for creative solutions to keep oil flowing and the economy afloat. China and Russia quickly stepped in, buying Venezuelan oil at a discount and helping the country bypass the dollar entirely. These new partners provided technology, investment, and crucial diplomatic support. Venezuela began accepting payments in yuan, rubles, and even cryptocurrencies for its oil exports. This shift away from the dollar opened up new possibilities and markets. Barter deals and alternative payment channels emerged, growing more sophisticated over time. Oil was traded for food, medicine, and technology, creating a complex web of international exchange. A shadow network of tankers and banks quietly facilitated this new trade, moving oil and money through discrete channels that were difficult to track or disrupt. Ironically, the very sanctions meant to enforce dollar dominance ended up encouraging its circumvention. The world watched as Venezuela and its partners found ways to sidestep U.S. control. Venezuela and its allies learned to operate outside the U.S. financial system, building new networks and strengthening ties with other sanctioned nations. These lessons quickly spread, accelerating the rise of a parallel financial universe. Countries facing similar sanctions began to adopt Venezuela's playbook, further eroding U.S. leverage. The attempt to preserve the system ended up weakening it, as cracks appeared in the foundation of dollar supremacy. Instead of collapse, the sanctions became a catalyst for change and resilience. Venezuelan workers and leaders found new hope, repairing pipelines and forging ahead. The paradox was clear: in trying to isolate Venezuela, the U.S. inadvertently helped build the very tools needed to bypass its own power. The backfire was complete, and the world took careful note of the lesson. Not all oil is the same, and that matters more than most realize. U.S. shale oil is light and sweet, but American refineries, especially on the Gulf Coast, are built for heavy, sour crude. For decades, Venezuela supplied much of this heavy oil. Sanctions cut off that supply, leaving U.S. refineries scrambling. Retooling refineries is costly and slow. Finding new sources isn't easy. The result: logistical headaches and higher costs for the U.S. energy sector. America's supposed energy independence is more complicated than it seems. The sanctions hurt Venezuela, but also exposed a critical U.S. vulnerability. Heavy crude became a strategic asset, and China moved quickly to secure it. The U.S., in trying to punish Venezuela, ended up hurting its own industry. The oil market is more interconnected and fragile than most people think. The lesson: energy security is about more than just pumping oil. The petrodollar system made the U.S. dollar the world's oil currency, creating constant demand for dollars. This gave America cheap borrowing and powerful sanctions. But Venezuela's non-dollar oil sales poked holes in this system. Every barrel sold in yuan or rubles weakened the dollar's grip. Alone, Venezuela couldn't topple the petrodollar, but it set a precedent. Other countries wary of U.S. dominance watched and learned. The slow leak had begun. If global demand for dollars falls, the U.S. faces higher borrowing costs and inflation. The privilege of the world's reserve currency would fade, eroding America's superpower status. The process is gradual, a leak, not a blowout, but the trend is clear. As more oil producers accept other currencies, the dollar's dominance weakens. Even Saudi Arabia is considering selling oil to China in yuan. When the anchor wavers, the system is in real flux. Venezuela's actions were an early warning of a tectonic shift. The world is moving toward a new financial order. For decades, the U.S. dominated Latin America. Now China is rewriting the rules. China's approach is simple: investment, infrastructure, and loans. No lectures on politics. For Venezuela, cut off from Western finance, China became a lifeline. Billions in loans are repaid with oil bypassing the dollar. China secures energy. Venezuela gets cash to survive. This strategy is reshaping the region. China is now the top trading partner for many Latin American countries. Ports, railways, and power plants are springing up built with Chinese money. It's not charity, it's a calculated move to gain influence and resources. The US, focused on sanctions, missed the scale of China's advance. Venezuela's crisis became China's opportunity. The balance of power in the Americas is shifting. China's ambitions are global, and the Belt and Road Initiative is the centerpiece. It's not just about building roads and ports, it's about building a new financial system. China is pushing the yuan as a global currency, setting up swap lines and launching oil contracts priced in yuan. This gives oil producers an alternative to the dollar. Deals with Venezuela fit perfectly. Oil for loans paid in yuan show the world there are options beyond the dollar. Countries at odds with US policy see the yuan as a shield from sanctions. The new system is young, but the direction is clear. The dollar's dominance is being challenged, brick by brick. The BRI is the physical network. De-dollarized oil trade is the financial engine. Every non-dollar transaction adds to China's new road. The world is watching, and some are following. The future of global finance is being built now. The Silk Road is paved with yuan. Venezuela's story is just the beginning of a global trend. Around the world, countries are seeking to reduce their dependence on the US dollar. In the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is deepening ties with China and considering yuan oil sales. If the world's top oil exporter moves away from the dollar, the impact will be huge. In Asia, China, Russia, and India are boosting local currency trade. Russia, hit by sanctions, has nearly de-dollarized its economy. Even US allies in Europe are exploring ways to bypass the dollar, as seen with Instex. The desire for alternatives is growing everywhere. The Venezuelan crisis is not an outlier, it's a sign of a world hedging its bets. The shift to a multi-currency system is accelerating. The dollar's era of unchallenged dominance is ending. We're at a turning point in global history. The post-war order, built on US leadership and the dollar, faces its biggest test. Venezuela's crisis shows how resource competition and new powers are reshaping the world. The petrodollar's supremacy is fading and the transition could be turbulent. For the US, the risks are real. Less power, higher costs, and a need to adapt. Sanctions and financial pressure may lose their bite in a multipolar world. The rest of the world faces uncertainty too. A multi-currency system could be more fragmented and unstable. Will the yuan bring balance, or just new dominance? The future is unwritten, but the transformation is underway. The story of Venezuela is just one chapter in a global shift. The challenge is to see past the headlines and understand the deeper forces at work. The answers to today's questions will define the century. The world is in flux, and the outcome is still up for grabs.